Hello, everybody. Um, so I want to invite, like Marcy, you can unmute and join at any point, because one of the things about this film that is very different than how most films get made is it was made by us collectively. So the work that we're still doing, that you see some of which you see in the film, is an ongoing thing. But it's something that came out of a relationship I've had with Marcy, and something's funny is happening with you, Marcy, and I want to know what it is. So I know we're all in our little pods. So how are you all feeling? I want to see people's, like, it's I don't know, I'm getting attic fatigue. So but yeah, it's like the film has been 20 years in the making. And it started with interviews with basically with grandmas and folks who are part of the Red Power movement. So a couple of like major goals with the film has been to uncover that history that's always been there, but nobody knows it in a bigger picture, and to change the way we think, and continue to provide more history and media that is coming from communities instead of, about communities. So there's so many things tied to the Warrior Women Project, which is an ongoing effort that involves the Warrior Women film. And I'm happy to share more about that. But I definitely want you to hear from Marcy, who has a connection also. And I put two photos. I don't know if you can open them, and I hope it's okay, won't Sheila, because it's a photo from the survival school that you saw in the film of Debbie and Diane jealous of him. So it's intergenerational and related, and these two were in survival school. So I don't know, can you open it? Can you see it, Marcy, the photo?
I'm trying to open it right now.
Okay. Yeah, because I could share it, but I'd have to have Zoom power. But yeah, so yeah, I'm open to any questions. I just like I said, it's a little bit different because I did co-direct the film with somebody, but we're continuing to do the work, a lot of the work that you see in the film, as part of the Warrior Women Project. So it's ongoing, and we're always looking for people to be involved or to give us ideas. So.
Oh, look at Debbie.
I love the background on the survival school photos too. They're like a beautiful assault to your eyes. Like that's the coolest school photos ever, because everyone is smiling like big time. And think about that. I don't know. I don't see that in school photos all the time. All right, there she is.
You showed my mom.
Yeah, I wanted to pull out the two photos I have from the survival school, and Debbie, and then I have Diane too. So I put them both in the chat, if that's okay with you. I wanted to share it so you see the connection directly.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And I saw that my dad
you look just like her.
Oh, thank you. This is my Aunt Diane. She's my mom's older sister. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
And I see your son too in her. Oh, your genes are strong.
Thank you.
No, that sort of fits, I guess, Marcy, with the thing that you often share is that, we told the story, we told Madonna and Marcy's story in hopes that story, a lot of people, you could see their stories in it, not because we wanted to hold up, them as a, I mean, everybody's special, but at the same time, they're part of lots of other families, and you can see how it's all interconnected, that through the survival school and other ways that they're part of a bigger picture of mother and daughter and family, family movement.
I would like to hear
Right.
some questions.
Questions or thoughts? It's a small group, which is the best.
I just have a comment to make. This is Virginia. I don't know where you all are, but good to meet you all. Yesterday we were having a conversation just about, kind of what we're thinking about, what we're talking about right now, where we don't know from wherever we are stories about other places. And, now with, the internet and everything, it's a lot easier to get stories. So that's exactly what we were talking about, is that once we know a story, it does give us a connection. And, for me, myself, here in Southern California, being involved in some of those movements too, and being aware at the time of what was happening out at Pine Ridge, and being aware of Alcatraz and all of those, movements that were taking place. It's just kind of good to know a little bit more about who the people were behind it. I know some local people here who were, at Alcatraz and so forth, but it's just better to know other people and what got them interested and what pushed them forward. And, now I know, one Sheila, and, it's kind of like, wow, we all are really connected. And it's just, it's a really great feeling. And I think it's a good motive, to keep pushing forward, to keep teaching the children and the next generations about these histories and about these stories and what was really behind them. And I think that's kind of maybe lost on a lot of people, and it needs to be, it's very important. So yeah, just thanking you all for your work, because I know it is a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm always going to comment on things because that's a teacher thing. You're like, basically repeat what someone said to you and try and make it, sound like you're an authority. But yeah, it's I mean, that's the thing about right now is we've been talking a lot, and I'm really into how history gets made, and that's part of why this film is what it is that it was 20 years ago I started studying stuff at an institution for a PhD, and I was just told that the history I wanted to look at didn't exist and didn't matter. So when you talk about right now, some folks know what happened in the Red Power movement. Some people have no idea what Red Power means, or they go to Alcatraz and they don't even see that the most significant thing that ever happened on that island was the idea of reclaiming it, and how real it could have been. And for example, how it connects to the land back movement, that this next generation of activists, of Native, fighters are making it real. It doesn't have to be just this, it's the symbolism of it is very important, but we're beyond symbolism, where the reclamation of land and responsibility and care for it is really possible, and wanting people to see that it's not a magic solution, where you have to be super special and have all the connections. You just have to care and find a crew and to do it. So any other thoughts that anyone wants to share? Or Marcy, would you wish to pontificate?
Well, I do want to say I miss those days. And I'm really, being at Standing Rock, I'm so glad Standing Rock happened, because it seemed like there was, we could tell our story and we could tell how cool it was and what we learned, and what's the result of all the movement that was going on back in the 70s. But young people were like, oh yeah, that's cool, wow, you know. But then Standing Rock happened, and that was an opportunity for young people and people of, you know, everybody to really be involved in something that had that kind of energy and spirit that was missing since the 70s. You know, that spirit of really truly believing in something and fighting for it. And so now we have this, again, a resurgence of people moving and getting active and learning and using our intelligence in ways that really truly matter, especially for Indian people. Because we, you know, I went to college, I went to university, got a degree, did all that, but there was still there wasn't much in that world that validated me, not only as a Native person, but as a Native woman. And so the messaging is still out there that we're not smart enough to handle it. We're not, you know, we're still invisible, you know, that kind of thing. But I think Standing Rock put us on the map again, globally again, just like Alcatraz, just like Wounded Knee, 73. And so I think that I'm just so glad that it happened, because that's the kind of thing that gives us the energy and the confidence to really believe that we are smart. We do belong here. This is our land. I am unique. I am special. And no, you don't think like me. And you know, you're not ever going to know who I am because you're not going to take the time to know me. I'm Indigenous, and Indigenous is different from minority. We are not a minority. We may not have the numbers, but that's because of the acts of genocide and extermination. But in the political world, we're not minorities. We are nations. And we have a government to, you know, a nation to nation relationship. And minorities don't have that in this country. That's the difference. And that's where we need to build our intelligence again. And so I'm really thankful for Standing Rock, and I really miss it because it was such a powerful time. People were actually thinking into the future. This is the kind of community I want to create. This is the kind of behavior I want to live in daily. And I want my children to experience this. And so I hang on to that because it was so powerful at Standing Rock. And there were people from all over the world. And the history that was made there, the fact that all our tribes who came together and you know, we were together at the time, and then Custer came along and thought he was going to wipe us all out, and we all, you know, we know what happened there. But those tribes, we got to come together again at Standing Rock. That's history. That's historical. That's powerful. And I think we need to remember that the world came to Standing Rock, and the reason why the world came to Standing Rock. Because we all want to live, no matter where we are or where we come from, we want to live. We want clean air. We want access to our lands. We want access to our foods. And I think that's the intelligence that needs to be built upon within our nations, because we're global, you know, we're, because of the internet, everybody knows who's doing what and who's being active where and what's going on and what are the issues. We know that stuff like right now. All we have to do is click on Facebook or something. But with that comes great responsibility. I mean, we have to do more than just like a page. Or, you know, it's time that we really truly take our intelligence seriously, because the world is looking at us. And so if we are who we say we are, then we need to behave that way. And so I think moving forward can be really powerful for us if we get it together in ways that are meaningful, that are going to make a difference in the future. Because now's the time. Now's the time. There's more tolerance now than there has been that I can remember, and tolerance of everybody. And so now's the time for us to use our intelligence and use our whatever tools we have to move forward as nations, and how we create those relationships with others is really, really important, because everybody's useful and everybody has a role. So I think that's what I've been thinking about since Standing Rock. And I'm really, really thankful for Standing Rock, because now we have a whole new generation of people who are using their intelligence and moving forward and putting us in those places where we have to be responsible. So there it is. I hope I wasn't on mute.
No, but I was freaking out until I was told it was being recorded, because like, damn it, Marcy. I was freaking out, like, that was the best one she's dropped so far, just in case, saved it for the 10 of us. And I try not to do it every time, where I'm like, whatever it is, Madonna used to drop her microphone into the toilet accidentally. I'm like, no, you didn't. But that was, it's funny that Marcy shared it, and also in that way, because I was just thinking, because so many people have contacted us all over the globe, Indigenous people, Indigenous women all over the globe, who want to show it and be a part of it and be connected. And it's like the belly of the beast syndrome. Everywhere you go, when you're like in the belly of the beast, like we are now, you don't feel often the power that you have. And it's where Indigenous people are in a global context is really powerful, holding down and protecting the remaining biodiversity of the planet. And just the fact that that despite the fact that you're in a space where lots of people are constantly going, oh, I didn't know it still existed, and that voice from the main narrative of a country, you go a few inches either way and you realize how many people are looking to Indigenous people for leadership, despite all the challenges in surviving. So it is hard to get that feeling, but it's the thing that's happening all over the world. And what Marcy said was really powerful. So I don't need to mess it up. Take all the air out of it.
Well, thank you both for coming on and allowing us to show this documentary. It was really, I always enjoy watching it myself, just because my parents are involved, and this survival school is a big part of my family, and the survival school is my family. So Marcy's was my mom's best friend, and they all took care of me and my sister when we were babies. So to be a part of something like this is a big honor. So I just want to say thank you to Beth, and thank you to Auntie Marcella for coming on today and answering questions and giving us some insight on the things that are happening today. So one of the questions is from a community member who's asking, what was the hardest part of the filmmaking process? Yeah, I guess that's the first question.
It was all of it. Yeah. It's really, I guess the biggest challenge is how do you, and this is, I guess the question would be getting people's responses, is that the people that we made it for are mostly all of you on this call. Like, does it serve and connect to you? Because it was very hard to try to take on telling a story like this and do it in a way where we could educate people who don't know anything about the story, but still be respectful to and honor the people who are the story. So I think that was the hardest part. And then the other part is just playing the game. We got lots of big funders and so there's just all kinds of compromises you have to make. But that's the other part, is we just, unlike other film makers or teams, we really just want to share access, like you don't get access and then take it and run away. You want to make sure other people have it. That's why the Warrior Women Project is ongoing. And we want to see people involved. But it is really hard to make a good film. I will say that. I am proud of this. I think Marcy, feels good about it too. But and it takes a team, it's everybody. So, but it's, and there's other things we can talk about. We're doing more talks as we go, because what it takes to find archival, like old pictures, for example, I'm still asking, like, who has them? If you have pictures of your mom, all these matter, because you think about it, like, look how hard it is to find photos of Native women historically that aren't part of the fake crap that was done by the still photographers at the turn of the century, who wanted to create, they literally told people not to smile, that created the stoic image, the stoic Indian stereotype. So, taking back how you make your own media is important. I think people still, and we do it as a film team sometimes, still end up letting other people dictate the terms, because we're so used to, like, well, what are your questions and how are we gonna give you information? But it's it's a process, and I hope more films get made like this. Yeah, sorry, I got going there. Oh, why they went to Geneva. People in the chat, people like, that's where the new thing is, that's people put stuff in the chat. So actually Geneva, I mean, Marcy, do you want to, why you went to Geneva? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of was explained in the film a little bit. When AIM was really getting active on the reservation, on Pine Ridge specifically, the leadership, the spiritual leadership, did a lot of the the guidance of what the movement was doing. So it was that spiritual leadership, those old the elderly, they're all gone now, but they were the ones who said that you need to take this to the UN. You need to take this issue to the UN because of our treaties. Our treaties are nation to nation. That's where we need to go. We need to not be, constantly fighting with the US government and acting like they're in control, because they're not. Our relationship is at the international level. So there was a lot of work done by my mother and her sisters, Phyllis Young. Phyllis Young specifically, she did a lot of the work in developing relationships at the international level. And so that's how we ended up in Switzerland at the UN. That's where the United Nations is located. So that's where, and then the International Indian Treaty Council that was formed you know, they worked, and Phyllis Young was part of that. They were the organization that coordinated everything and created those relationships, and they continue to do that now. It's a global organization. So we went there to, you know, voice our concerns of what was going on in Indian country, and talk about our treaties, and basically demanding our human rights, which is something that everybody has to do now, because the corporations are violating everybody's human rights now. But that was one of the reasons why we went to Geneva. And I got to go because my mom was invited to go, of course, because she was one of the organizers, but she chose to stay home because she had work going on at home. She had, you know, she was managing the survival group, and, you know, Women of All Red Nations, and she had all kinds of stuff going on. But she also talked to her brother, Ted Means, and said, you know what, this is a big deal. We need to send some young people. And so they, you know, talked to the survival school, and we're all like, okay, who wants to go? And of course I wanted to go. And Joseph Lafferty went. So him and I went from the survival school, and then Russell Means took his daughter, Sherry Means. So there was us three young people that got to go that time. And the reason why Mom wanted to do that is because she wanted us to, you know, she was trying to create a pathway for young people to be able to, like she said in the film, to pick it up and carry it on. So that's how I got to go. I hope that answered your question.
Well, it also is such an important part that we want to flesh out more, that it's like basically the next film. And, you know, Standing Rock happens. It was Standing Rock in 1974, right after Wounded Knee, where the International Indian Treaty Council is formed based on, you know, what Marcy described as, you know, the spiritual leadership of elders. Then the brilliance of just being like, don't, in the belly of the beast, don't beg your oppressors, go and stand as nations at the United Nations. And so from 1977, when that trip happened, to 2007, a 40-year struggle to define who's Indigenous and create the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And that is just one of those things where almost every major global thing you can track to a small group of Native women. And that's one of the stories that isn't known. Very, like, people, when people talk about Standing Rock, they don't know that that's the birthplace of the global movement for Indigenous rights. And that it's connected to Women of All Red Nations, which is a really powerful group looking at and protecting and thinking about water and land and protecting women and women's bodies, you know, from sterilization. So there's a whole lot of like really powerful ways when you get beyond sort of even people's short version of history, how deep it goes and how you all carry it and have to carry it forward. So I think there's lots of questions now popping up in the chat. So what do you think?
I do want to share that also Standing Rock was where the American Indian movement had the very first international treaty conference. So there is a lot of history just on Standing Rock concerning the American Indian movement. And the International Indian Treaty Council is based in California. Some of you probably already know that.
Let me read off a couple more questions that was just asked of. Elisa is asking to Marcy, Can you express what it's been like for you to grow up and be at the center of the movement that your relatives set forth to protect the children and their communities, then branching out in a national and global level?
What it was like to grow up in the movement. To be a child of the movement is, and this is just for me, I'm not talking about any other young people who grew up with the movement, but there was a lot of responsibility, and I was expected to use my intelligence. I was expected to be confident in my ability and be able to, when someone asked me something, I was, expected to have an answer. I was also told to know what I was talking about, to not just talk just because someone asked you a question, and not to pretend that I knew everything, because obviously, who knows everything? But there was a lot of responsibility, but again, remember, the American Indian movement didn't have a guidebook. This was something that was put together by people who wanted to make a difference for our communities. It wasn't something that was, there wasn't a template or something to follow. Like, this is what we should do, and this is what, everything was, this needs to happen, let's do it. And so that was one of the lessons that I learned, is if you want to see some change, or if you think it's important, just do it. The other thing I learned is when you choose to be in that space, you find yourself alone. And I saw this with my uncle Russell Means and his brothers. I saw it with my mother and her sisters, and Phyllis Young, the people who chose to do the work. A lot of times they were by themselves. You just move forward, whether you got your people behind you or not, because a lot of remember, our people came from, and we continue to come from, a place of oppression and colonization, and years of generations of being told that we're not smart enough, our voices don't matter, all that kind of thing. So there's a lot, and it continues today. There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, you should do that, I got your back. But when it I've seen it many times where when you're in those positions of leadership and working for change for your people, you spend a lot of time alone, because there's a lot of fear around being persecuted for your beliefs. And the way that the United States government is set up, Indian people, our voices are constantly being silenced. And look what's happening. Look what's happening to our people. A lot of the major, just an example, the prison system in this country is full of Indian people. You could go to any major prison and the majority there are Native people. So that tells you how this government, is systematically set up to keep us silent. So of course people are going to be afraid. Of course people are going to be like, no, you do it. I'll support you. I'll like your page. But those are some of the things that I learned being in the movement. Was there's a lot of responsibility, but also it was so empowering to be a young person and learn that I'm special. I have treaty rights. Who else has that? Who else can say that? Or, you know, I take pride in knowing that my mother and my brother were at Wounded Knee in 1973 fighting the United States government. That was the last Indian war. Armed conflict. And those kinds of things I take pride in, because that's what Indian people did at Wounded Knee 73 is honorable to our history of our nations who took pride in being warriors and protecting our people. So as a young person, it was really empowering for me, but it was also really fun, because remember, I was a young person. So we got to, you know, travel around and explore and meet people and snag. Well, you know, it was fun. It was fun. And I, you know, I wish my children could have had those same experiences growing up, because it was powerful for us. It was for me. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Okay. I think we have enough time for maybe one more question that I'll ask, because we're running out of time. What do you do to stay resilient, and how are you coping with these times today?
Okay, I'm gonna answer that, and then I gotta go. I'll give my answer, and then Beth, you could pick it up. So the resilience part is based in responsibility. So it isn't like, oh, you know, this is happening, let's go check it out, and then go back home and forget about it. You know, it because we're indigenous to this land, and you know, our lands are under attack, as well as our people and anything else. So it's a responsibility. So you find that resilience within yourself, and you use the tools that you have around you, like our spirituality, our you know, our camaraderie with other people who are working on the same things. And with the pandemic, because we can't gather like we used to or travel like we used to, social media is playing a major role. And so everybody can stay informed and communicate with each other and do this, you know, do Zoom meetings and still organize and affect change that way. So we just use the tools that we have, you know, and we keep people aware of what's moving and what's happening and what needs to happen and how are we going to do it and all that kind of stuff. We just keep moving forward, because I mean, it's our responsibility. Our ancestors did it for us, and we got to do it for our children and grandchildren. So we find our resilience wherever we can. But I think the love for our future is the motivator. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I got to get going, so I'm going to let Beth finish it out. I do want to say that I'm working with my husband and my son on creating some kind of situation for young people. It may not be the survival school that you saw in the film, but we are working on something. And also individually for myself, I have I'm working on a podcast, and it's just in the beginning stages, but I want to create a, you know, a space where we can talk about these kinds of things and things that I like to talk about. So that's why I'm going to create a podcast all about me. Hey, no, I'm just kidding. But I'm hoping to get that going as soon as possible too. So, and when I do, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, So I think that's all the questions we have, unless anybody else wants to say anything one more time. We just want to thank you again. So thank you guys. Thank you, everybody.
For having us.
I guess that's all we have today.